Islamic Republic of Afghanistan is a landlocked country, bordered by Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, China, and Pakistan. Its population was estimated in 2013 at about 31 million. The capital of Afghanistan is Kabul, which has a population of about 3.2 million. This is the most populated city in Afghanistan. Kandahar, the nation's second largest city, contains less than 500,000 citizens. The western city of Herat's population is approximately 436,000. In Herat, every Thursday night is poetry night, and men, women, and children gather to share ancient and modern verse, listen to traditional Herati music, and enjoy sweet tea and pastries long into the night. The first Afghan state emerged in April of 1709. Later that century, in 1747, the Afghan Empire rose. But Afghanistan was not considered independent until August of 1919, at the conclusion of the Third Anglo-Afghan War. The 3-month conflict ended when the border between British India and the Emirate of Afghanistan was established, and the Afghan people promised not to cause trouble on the British side. Afghanistan celebrates its Independence Day on August 19th. Later on, in 1979, the 10-year Soviet war began between Soviet-led Afghan forces and a group known as Mujahideen, meaning the strugglers. This conflict resulted in the deaths of over 1 million Afghans, mostly civilians. About 6 million fled to Pakistan and Iran, and from there tens of thousands began emigrating to the European Union, United States, Australia, and other parts of the world. Faced with mounting international pressure and a great number of casualties, the Soviets withdrew in 1989 but continued to support Afghan President Mohammad Najibullah until the Islamic Rebellion in 1992. In April of that year, various rebel groups, together with the newly rebellious government troops, stormed the besieged capital of Kabul, and Najibullah was ousted from power. A new transitional government, sponsored by various rebel factions, proclaimed an Islamic Republic. 2 years later, in 1994, a group of Islamic students who called themselves the Taliban began attacking Kabul. They finally took control of the capital in September of 1996 and established the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. On the parts of Afghanistan that they controlled, the Taliban imposed their own political and judicial interpretation of Islam. They issued edicts, especially ones targeting women. On September 11, 2001, 19 al-Qaeda members hijacked 4 U.S. airplanes. 2 hit the Twin Towers in New York City, 1 collided into the Pentagon, and the 4th crashed in Pennsylvania after passengers overcame the terrorists. Its intended target was Washington, D.C. Overall, more than 3,000 people were killed, including hundreds of firefighters, thousands of civilians, and all 19 terrorists. Although hugely devastating, the real shock is that the original plan for this attack was far more extensive. 9 airliners were to hit landmarks along both the east and west coasts, and a 10th would be landed in a U.S. airport by 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. After he killed all adult male passengers, he would alert the media and give a speech excoriating U.S. support for Israel, the Philippines, and repressive governments in the Arab world.
The top 5 products exported by Afghanistan are scrap iron, 12%, vegetable sap, 9%, grapes, 8.7%, tropical fruits, 8.4%, and other nuts, 6.2%. Top 5 products imported by Afghanistan are refined petroleum, 24%, specialized vehicles, 9.1%, wheat flours, 2.8%, cement, 2.5%, and cars, 2.1%. Unemployment rate in Afghanistan increased to 15% in 2011 from 9% in 2009. Unemployment rate in Afghanistan averaged 6.57% from 2001 until 2011, reaching an all-time high of 15% in 2011 and a record low of 3.37% in 2002. Unemployment rate in Afghanistan is supported by the Gallup.
Underneath these snow-capped peaks, some 3,000 meters above sea level, hundreds of men are hard at work. A network of mine shafts, hundreds of meters long, riddle the mountains of the Panjshir Valley. They have been worked for decades by locals who have absolutely no training in mining techniques or any modern equipment. But in the 6th poorest country in the world, these men are desperate to take a tiny share of Afghanistan's vast, untapped mineral wealth.
In the 1970s, Afghanistan was discovered to have a wide variety of mineral resources, but only coal, iron ore, copper ore, and gemstone were targeted for development. In June 2010, the U.S. discovered nearly $1 trillion in untapped mineral sources.
Cultivation of poppy, the base crop for opium and heroin in Afghanistan, is higher than ever. That's according to a new report by the UN Office on Drugs and Crime.
Between 1994 and 2000, in the 7 years prior to the Taliban opium ban, the Afghan farmers' share of gross income from opium was divided among 200,000 families. In addition to opiates, Afghanistan is also the largest producer of cannabis, mostly as hashish, in the world. Also, more land is now used for opium in Afghanistan than for cocaine cultivation in Latin America. In 2007, 92% of the non-pharmaceutical grade opiates on the world market originated in Afghanistan.
Natural gas fields are scattered throughout much of Afghanistan. Recent analysis by the United States Geological Survey has indicated significant unexploited oil reserves in the north as well. This will become the backbone of the Afghan economy, said Jalil Jamrani, an advisor to the Afghan Minister of Mines.
The politics of Afghanistan consists of the Council of Ministers, provincial governors, and National Assembly, with the president serving as the head of state and commander-in-chief of the Afghan armed forces. The nation is currently led by the Karzai administration under President Hamid Karzai, who is backed by two vice presidents, Mohammad Fahim and Mohammad Karim Khalili. In the last decade, the politics of Afghanistan have been influenced by NATO countries, particularly the United States, in an effort to stabilize and democratize the country. In 2004, the nation's new constitution was adopted and an executive president was elected. The following year, a general election to choose parliamentarians took place. Since NATO combat troops are scheduled to withdraw later this year, the possibility that the Taliban might seek to regain power is yet again a very real threat. Also, other insurgent conflicts could arise. The main contenders among the 8 candidates are former foreign ministers Abdullah Abdullah and Zalmay Rasool, and former finance minister Ashraf Ghani Ahmadzai. Abdullah Abdullah was Hamid Karzai's main challenger in 2009. Foreign minister in 2001 to 2006 and de facto opposition leader since 2009, he is of mixed Tajik and Pashtun heritage, the two main ethnic groups. He appeals to both groups, however he is widely seen as a Tajik owing to his past role in the Tajik-dominated Northern Alliance, as well as his ties to its former leader, Ahmad Shah Massoud, who was assassinated in 2011.
Former foreign minister and very much outgoing President Karzai's favoured man.
Ex-academic Ashraf Ghani Ahmadzai was finance minister in Hamid Karzai's government from 2004 to 2006. He appeals to urban Pashtuns and technocrats, but would need the backing of Pashtuns in the southwest to do well in the first round. He has no Tajiks on his ticket and may struggle to get Tajik votes.
Taliban rockets. Insurgent intimidation, candidate corruption. But Western taxpayers...
Zalmay Rasool, a 70-year-old diplomat of royal lineage, served as foreign minister in 2010 to 2013. He is not seen as a polarizing figure and has performed well in televised debates. There are also 5 other candidates in the running, but none of them is expected to take a significant share of the vote. During some of the election rallies, women were allowed in, segregated from the men, of course. During others, no women were present. But this is no surprise. Recently, in a Guardian News article, the writer accuses Afghanistan of being one of the worst places to be a woman.
In September 1996, officials of the Islamic State of Afghanistan under Burhanuddin Rabbani were displaced by forces of the Taliban. The United Nations refused to recognize the Taliban government. Instead, it recognized the Islamic State as the official government in exile. The organization of the Islamic Conference left the Afghan seat vacant until the questions of legitimacy could be resolved through negotiations among the warring factions. After the Taliban's refusal to hand over Osama bin Laden to the U.S. authorities for his suspected involvement in the September 11 attacks in New York City and Washington, D.C., a U.S.-led international coalition was formed. After several weeks of aerial bombardment by coalition forces and military actions on the ground, including Afghan opposition forces, the Taliban was officially ousted from power on November 17, 2001.
All around, there is fighting.
Barely able to walk even with a cane, Ghulam Rasul says he padlocked his front door, handed over the keys and his 3 cows to a neighbor, and fled his mountain home in the middle of the night to escape relentless airstrikes from the U.S. drones targeting militants in a remote corner of Afghanistan. Rasul and other Afghan villagers have their own name for predator drones. They call them Bengai, which in the Pashto language means the buzzing of flies. When they explain the noise, they scrunch their faces and try to make a sound that resembles an army of flies. They are evil things that fly so high you don't see them, but all the time you hear them, said Rasul. Night and day we hear this sound, and then the bombardment starts. Later, he adds, these foreigners started the problem. They have their own country. They should leave.
So what more is there to do to improve the relationship between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan? What happens to us after the election?
Does that affect the aid we send Afghanistan?
What do we get out of our relationship with Afghanistan?
There's more than $1 trillion in untouched resources.
Do we go for the gemstones?
Oil?
Iron?
Or have we taken enough from this nation?